to the Gentleman's Lounge. I'm Peyton, and I'm your host of the Gentleman's Handbook Podcast. And today, I'm very honored to have a special guest, Sensei Kevin Smith, with me today. Truly a New Orleans original, helping the community out in any way possible. We need more men like this, so I decided to bring him on the show because I think he exonerates what it means to be a gentleman. And what do you want to say to people?
I want to say hello, New Orleans. It's been a while since I've been back home, since the pandemic and everything that took place. So just happened to be back home and here for a visit and enjoying myself.
Okay. So you originally from New Orleans, living right now in Florence, South Carolina right now.
That's correct.
What brought you to Florence, South Carolina?
Well, after Hurricane Katrina, we decided to settle there at the time because we lost everything with Katrina, the businesses, the homes, the cars. And there was a relative of my wife that was in Florence that been wanting us to come see their new home. Mm-hmm. So we said, okay, well, we'll just get away from the hurricane for a minute, and we'll go see your home and come on back home. Didn't know that it was going to be the way it turned out. Okay. So when I heard that the Jackson Barracks was underwater in the night ward, then I knew my house was gone. Because my house, I come out my front door and I watched them work out in the back in the Jackson Barracks. They'd be training right in front of me, So.
Okay, yeah, the Jackson Barracks right on there.
That's
the,
3 stores.
The line between Araby and all these parishes right there. So you was in the lower ninth ward, so automatically you knew.
I knew off the top.
Okay. So I want to start off talking about some of your background, where you from and everything like that, and how did you grow up. So, where are you from? You already said that, lower ninth ward. Is that where you're from?
Well, no, originally I grew up in the 7th ward of New Orleans.
Okay.
When I was a baby, actually we grew up in the 6th ward, in the Tremay area. And then my mother got a home on Annette Street, which is the 7th ward. So I would go back and forth, because that was kind of my roots, the Tremay area plus the 7th ward.
Okay.
And eventually we moved to the 9th ward.
Yeah, so what was your childhood like?
My childhood was a good childhood. I had good role models in front of me. That's why I kind of do what I do today. Okay. I'm a by-child product of the 60s. The Honorable Jerome Smith of the Tambourine and Fan organization, which is in the 7th ward. And, of course, they're also in presence in the Tremay area as well at the Tremay Community Center. Jerome was our mentor. He's a civil rights icon here from New Orleans. And, he took us and trained us in football. We played football, basketball. But to play those games, we had to read so many black books. We had to do so many things in the community because his thing was all about service, being that he was one that worked with the civil rights movement. He also knew Malcolm as well. James Baldwin was very close with him. We learned a lot. I learned things from James Baldwin. One thing I learned about writing, he said, it's not about if you can spell it. He said, just get it down where you understand it. And once you understand it, you get somebody who will translate and get it down correct for you. And I stuck with that, and so writing was something that I enjoyed once he explained that you don't have to be perfect in writing, perfect in your spelling, that type of thing. And it helped me to do some of the things that I do today. I besides martial arts, my martial arts school, that's what I'm known for here in New Orleans as a martial artist. The Fearless Tigers Cultural Arts Center is our school. We started in 1981 at the St. Mark's Community Center. And from the St. Mark's Community Center, we grew from that to other satellites throughout the city. Joe Brown Community Center in the New Orleans East area was one of them. We had a partnership with the city of New Orleans under the Morial administration.
Okay.
And where kids would come, to us for martial art training who belong to like different centers or different summer camps. They would send them to the Fearless Titan. We would partner with them and with Nord and whatnot. And we stayed there, to the duration of till Katrina happened. In addition to that, we had our headquarters, our building on Chef Mentor Highway, which was called a federal building.
Okay, I just passed the federal building today. It looked like it's, Katrina kind of roughed it up a bit, and they haven't done any reconstruction on it. Yeah,
and that was our corporate headquarters. But we had, in addition to that, we had 4 other locations. Mm-hmm. So totally before Katrina, I had close to 700 students. Okay. But over my years in teaching, over 40-something years, I've easily taught over 5,000 students.
That's remarkable. 5,000 students. That's a large number of people whose lives you had the opportunity to impact.
Yes.
In a positive way.
And then I wound up training some of my former students' children, you know. So that's a pleasure for me too, because, you know, they didn't grow up because of the exposure with us and having good families. They didn't grow up in the sense that, you know, they're doing crime or anything like that. You know, they're doing good things, and they got children, you know.
Okay.
Sorry about that. That's my phone going on.
Well, I want to go back to that powerful statement you made. You said it's not necessarily about knowing all the steps. Basically, you said about writing, but the way I interpret it is that it's not about knowing every single step when you take that journey to be successful. It's about just taking the steps and letting the pieces fall. You know, I think that's a powerful statement. I think that's something that a lot of young people today don't think about. They kind of struggle with that. And you know, and you talked about all the students and everything like that, which kind of segues right into my next question. You know, first I want to ask, what particular brand of martial arts? You know, today you got Taekwondo, you got karate, you have Kung Fu, you have Wing Chun, you have all kind of different forms of martial arts. What was your expertise?
Well, my background started in Taekwondo and Shotokan.
Okay.
So one is Korean, one is Japanese, and I have a 7th degree black belt in Taekwondo.
Okay.
But basically, I had developed my own system of martial arts, and that's in my book that I talk about as well. But I developed my own system of martial arts called the Hodari Jua Karate system. And Hodari Jua is a Swahili word, which means the rising sun. It's a progressive form of martial arts that embraces all mixed martial arts concepts and traditions of karate and self-defense, which means you might see something that might remind you of boxing, wrestling, Navy SEAL kind of tactical movements and whatever, because it's a mixture of different forms of arts. Okay. You know, and it's something I've been doing for over the years, and I use it as a bodyguard as well. They work. I've used them. Okay,
so very versatile, basically, because, you know, obviously, if let's say if your expertise is boxing and somebody have takedown moves like judo, you might have a hard time with a person like that because you might be able to fight standing up, but not on, you know, on the ground. So basically, would you tell them you have a pretty versatile system?
Yeah, we say pick your poison. So, you know, poison meaning we can fight from our knees, we can fight standing up, we can fight half distance, long distance, on our backs, on our sides, because you never know how an opponent is going to set up, you know, against you. Yeah. So nothing should be surprising for you. You should be able to adjust to any situation, fight from any angle.
I like that. It kind of goes into my next question. You know, what got you into martial arts originally?
That's really a great question, because not many people know this, and I didn't know it until some years later. My motivation naturally was, as most youngsters in the 70s, I grew up with Bruce Lee.
Okay.
Right? You know, one of my favorite shows was the Green Hornet in Kato, which Bruce Lee played as Kato. Then after that, he did a movie called The Big Boss. Well, it was called The Big Boss across overseas, but in the United States it was called Fist of Fury.
Okay.
And that was my first exposure to him there, and I was hooked at that point. I mean, I know him as Kato, you know. Then I see him, you know, as in his first motion picture, you know. So I said, I got to do this. So one day I was watching a Carolyn Tucker show here in New Orleans. It was a talk show, black talk show, and she had karate featured. And there was a guy teaching karate at the St. Mark's Community Center. His name was Jerry S. Everidge. And my friends, we all went there, and when we saw it, we joined in. It just so happened I was the one that stayed with it. Okay. And became a black belt under his training and whatnot in Taekwondo and in Shotokan.
Okay. Yeah, that's phenomenal. I mean, yeah.
But here's something that people, the surprising part I was telling you about. Okay. Many years later, as I'm teaching myself now, a guy named Dave Billings, he was the executive director of the St. Mark's Community Center. And this one day he happened to mention to me, he came over to St. Mark's, and I still had St. Mark's as a satellite. Even until Katrina we still had St. Mark's as a satellite. And he happened to be over there one day, and he's retired and everything, but he came over and said hello to me, and he said, Kevin, he said, you know who trained in this room? I said, yeah, the guy who I learned from in St. Mark's Community Center. I started my first satellite karate school in St. Mark's Community Center. His name is Jerry S. Everidge. He said, yeah, that's true, but I ain't talking about that. I said, what are you talking about? He said, Bruce Lee trained in this room. I said, go ahead, man. He said, no, really. He said, you remember the TV show called Long Street? And then you listen or will do some research, they will find out that there was a TV show called Long Street back in the 70s, and he was a private investigator. He was a blind man, but he had a white German Shepherd dog that would take him, around.
Yeah.
But he learned self-defense from when doing investigations. Sometimes you run into danger, so he had a guy to train him. The guy that trained him in the TV show was Bruce Lee, playing as Bruce Lee, and they shot that in the New Orleans French Quarters. Mm-hmm. So when they shot in the French Quarters, even to this day, St. Mark's Community Center loans itself out to the movie industry for the use of shooting films there, or either using the room that we call the powwow room at St. Mark's to do their lunch for their staff and everything. Mm-hmm. So Bruce Lee will come in that room and work out and train when he's off set. When he had to be in the quarters shooting the film, he'll go to St. Mark's and use that room and train in that room. And the ironic part about it is that's what motivated me when getting martial arts. And he trained in a room that I eventually taught in. And the guy who taught me Taekwondo also trained us in that room. Mm-hmm. And then I started my school in 1981 in the same room. So I'm looking at the parallel here.
Yeah, it's truly a small world. It's crazy, Your mentor, and I guess your mentor and one of your heroes kind of trained the same room as you trained, and you kind of kept the legacy going almost. You know?
Unaware, but time's a way of bringing things to your psyche, and I was very. That's what let me know that I was born to do this. What you. Sometimes it's like this, what you love to do, and what you do best is probably what you was born to do.
Yeah.
And so martial arts is my first love, acting is my second love, but most of all, serving the community is the ultimate love, because there was men that I could have been on the other side of that fence, and I made a decision to do right by men who taught me how to be a man. I come out of a single home, but my mother allowed me to be exposed to positive, black men in New Orleans from the Tambourine and Fan organization. And then, of course, when I met my first martial arts instructor, he was a state trooper besides teaching martial arts. And so he always kept us on the narrow, the straight and narrow as a police officer himself, So I had all those kind of experiences and whatnot. But when I started my school in 1981 at St. Mark's Community Center, I reflect on all those things that made me what I was. So I made that connect into my martial arts system. Every martial arts system has a spiritual base to it. And if you understand the Tambourine and Fan organization, you can understand the Fearless Tigers organization, because that was our experience. Out of Tambourine and Fan, we were community activists, we did community things. Mm-hmm. Martial arts was created to make society more stable. So that means that the martial arts, for me, and you have to be an activist as a martial artist to make your community stable. But the reason why communities became stable in Japan, in China, in Okinawa, is because they learned their culture. And in culture, you learn pride. Yeah. And when the people don't love themselves, they'll act evil upon themselves. So my thing was to show through the martial arts that as black people, we need to love ourselves. We need to do for self. And we would do things in the community with the senior citizens. We take kids to go read books, with them in their karate uniforms, because the elders are the reason why you're here. So we try to make sure that they respect the elders, as I was taught to respect the elders. Yeah. And so that's what we use as a martial art. But that's the real essence of martial arts. I'm doing nothing no different from what they do in China and Japan. Yeah. It's just that in America, it's punch and kicking. It's all about, get off my turf by sundown. But the real martial arts is about, service and discovering self, so there's self-discovery, self-improvement, as well as self-defense.
Okay. Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, I would think that, like you said, from watching the movies, a lot of times you hear him say things like, martial arts is not about the fighting, it's about the self-control, it's about the discipline kind of thing, Mm-hmm. And, obviously we have all sorts of fighting forms in America today, but I don't think it's really spiritual in nature. It's more about the combat and more about, I guess, making money. I think that's what it boils down to.
And when you say self-control, the only way you can have self-control, because if there's no self-control, there's no patience, there's no discipline. But the only way you get that, you have to come into knowledge. Knowledge brings about a self-control because you have a knowledge of a thing, and so you can be more patient with knowledge. And so we try to teach more than punching and kicking. Karate has to enlighten you about life and your environment and your community. That's the self-pride I was talking about earlier.
Okay. So I know you grew up in New Orleans, and I grew up in New Orleans that was very violent. Drug culture everywhere, murders everywhere, murder capital. You might step on somebody's shoe, get killed. Somebody might rob you if you have a nice pair of shoes.
Yes.
My question is, what role do you think martial arts kind of would play? I think you kind of spoke on it earlier, but what you think that if it was brought back to the community in a major way, how do you think it can make changes in the community?
You must teach them, if you're dealing with, like when I started with the African American youth.
Yeah.
Self-pride, the knowledge of self. And when you know the knowledge of self, then you can respect self better and you can respect others better, and you respect life better. So the generation today are missing that. They're missing that self-pride, the knowledge of self. Mm-hmm. And so whether it come to martial arts or whether it come to any kind of other programs, teaching kids about themselves is the most important thing. And I use martial arts as a tool to bring out the best in you as a young black man or young black woman,
Okay.
And that's the key. So, even today in these schools, I'll give you a good example. In Florence, South Carolina, I was called, they was looking for a martial arts instructor to teach kids who were at risk and they weren't turning in their homework, that kind of thing. And someone, said about the martial arts. So the principal sent the information out to all the teachers, a bulletin saying, anybody y'all know any martial arts schools or instructors you want to recommend that I look into, to let me know. She said all the emails came back on me. But I never met the teacher. I didn't know them. Mm-hmm. But they knew me through my students because of how they carried themselves in class. And so when I got there and come to find out, she found out that my daughter at the time was in the school. So naturally, I'll give y'all a discount because I'm in the school, right? Part of the school system. So we did well. We started like in January. And then after that, it was a situation where around, I think it was May. We came one day in the afternoon, me and my wife, because she's a black belt as well. She's a retired champion. And we saw all these teachers in the gym. And it was full of teachers in the gym. So we thought they canceled class because, they may have a teachers meeting, but nobody called to tell us about it. So, but when a lady walked up to us and said, no, we here for you. The principal said, we can come watch your class. We trying to figure out what did you do, because of how these kids turned around in a short time. But the funny part about it was that when we saw these children, the majority of them was white.
Yeah.
So when we heard the word, at risk, being from New Orleans, we thought at risk all our lives. So I was looking for another reality. When I saw that and saw what their problems really was, I said, it's a piece of cake for us. Yeah, you ain't got the black experience of hardship. Their reasons of not turning in their homework don't have nothing to do with some of these kids back in New Orleans may not turning their homework in. Their living conditions is much better than some of the kids I've dealt with, and single mothers here in New Orleans had went through a lot, looking for positive mental help with their child. But these kids, these white kids, and they have black kids too, but it was majority white children. Yeah. We turned them around in so short of a time, and the program stayed around for 4 years. We partnership with that school for 4 years, and they found the funding for it.
Okay. Yeah, I always say your reputation is how people speak about you when you're not around, and it's good to see that your reputation kind of spoke for you in a way, even though you never met the person. Mm-hmm. The reputation that you had kind of spoke for you in a way that they trusted you enough to, get it done. And I also applaud the school system for finding the funding for something they felt like they desperately needed. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of times in the communities, people like to talk but don't want to do the walking. Right. Don't want to put their money where their mouth is sometimes, or don't want to put their actions where their mouth is. And like you was talking about different communities, I see that, New Orleans is much different than when we were growing up, when government cheese and
remember those days,
those things like that. And, back in those days, you had a lot of dirty kids. You have kids who have holes in their clothes. You see kids who have shoes that's too big and shirts that's too big because their parents kind of want them to grow into it, kind of thing. And I don't see that anymore. But what I do see is more problems, though. Mm-hmm. I see less poverty, but I see more problems. As it seems to be more of a discipline thing, like you said. And sometimes you're right. If you don't have a knowledge of yourself, if you don't have self-love, you can't possibly love anybody else. If you don't like what you see in the mirror, you're going to hate what you see outside out of that. So I think that's important.
Very important. And, these children needs a lot of direction, but the system, the administrations that's out here, locally and internationally, and nationally rather, they don't put no time into them. They don't put no money behind them. It's one thing to talk about this problem with kids, but if you don't put no money into it, you're not going to get the results you're looking for. But I would say this, in spite of all what this generation gets into, which sometimes not that well, this is the best generation we ever produced as a people. Mm-hmm. But they need guidance. They're like the young Joshua in the scriptures, you know? And if you know anything about Joshua, you understand by and by how valuable these children are. What you call gains today and bad could be a protection for your community tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Under the right teaching. When I did this class it was called in Florence, South Carolina, the school is called Royal Elementary School, that we turned these kids around. But the principal she didn't want to pick the real bad ones. She said, because they're worse than the ones we're giving you. Which, like, that wasn't no problem for her, because your problem is not, we're used to this, but it's not that kind of at-risk kids situation we dealt with in New Orleans, so this is a piece of cake, we saying to ourselves. But she was saying that there were other kids she didn't want to put, it was really bad than the other ones. I said, no. I said, Miss Smith, her name was Miss Smith, Judy Smith. And I said, Miss Smith, that's the ones you want. Give me them, because they're your potential leaders. If we can teach them the better way, just like they influence other kids to do negative, if they get the right teachings in them and they buy into where I'm coming from as a martial arts teacher, then they'll lead in a positive direction rather than a negative direction. She said, that's very interesting. She said, I ain't thought of it like that. I said, yes. I said, because guess what? You know why I know that? She said, how you know that? Because I was one of them. I was a gang leader, but I turned myself around. I had my boys turned around. Yeah. So
I always say the converts are usually more vigorous for change than the actual people who are born into something. Mm-hmm. So like you said, if you get the worst kids, the ones who've been going down that wrong path, and they see a light, because you're right, sometimes they don't see anything else. They think, this is my life. This is what I'm going to be. But they see something different, opportunity to make a change. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very possible to make a change,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, now I want to get into your book. I know you said you're writing a book / movie. Your poster, I don't know if I'm zoomed in enough to check out this poster, so I'm going to bring it a little closer so the camera could get a better look at it. So,
yes, sir.
Sensei, a black urban action martial arts story by Kevin W. Smith. And, you look like you're about 38, but I know you're not. You can say you grew up in the 60s, you know what I'm saying? So, but you keep your health all right. You keep yourself together.
Yes, sir.
And but I see you have a book. Mm-hmm. Is the book and the movie the same, or is the book about your life and the movie is separate?
No, most time when you see a movie and you go see like a John Wick movie, and you might say, man, that was a good scene, especially the guy with the cab driver. He hit the guy and took his gun from him, and the guy might say, man, you need to read the book. It's worse than that. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Just the opposite. Which my life has always been, going against the grain anyway. Maybe that's the Pisces in me, swimming up the screen or whatever. But just the opposite. The screenplay was written first. Okay. And the novel came afterwards. And the reason why the novel came is because a friend of mine who's a poet, Kathy Marie Curtis, one of the greatest black poets, or poets period, that I ever came across. She is dynamite. She got some stuff coming out soon. And she said, Sensei, she said, have you thought about this? You got more you want to say. I know that there's more that you would put in your movie, but you only got so much time to put it in. She said, would you think about putting it as a manuscript? And I said, wow. I said, writing a screenplay is difficult as it is because it's very technical. Yeah. Now I got to take the technique out and go back and explain like a story. I said, I don't know, sister.
With all the quotations,
yeah,
he said.
And taking out camera, cover here, camera swoop down. I got to take all that technical stuff out. Yeah. I said, that's going to take me some time. I said, you know what? Well, hey, the pandemic got me. I'm locked down. I can't do much anyway. I said, well, maybe some God trying to tell me something. So I say, okay. I say, I'll give myself 3 months to break my script down and make it into a manuscript. And yes, there is a lot more I could say that I couldn't say, because when you're making a film, there's only so much time that's allowed.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll make it into a novel and do what I can do. So anyway, I did that, and I finished on time in those 3 months, and it took on a life of itself, And every time I sit down and wrote, I prayed before I write, so I can get insight. See, a lot of people don't think that a martial artist is spiritual, but we have to have spirit in what we do. What I liked about David Carradine in the TV show, I don't know if you remember this, back in the 70s, called the Kung Fu. It was just called Kung Fu, and it was about a guy he's half American, half Chinese, and during the cowboy days, and he's traveling from place to place, and he goes through these different adventures, and he's always reflecting back of his time in China with his master teacher teaching him about life, and he applies it to whatever situation he's in, whether it's physical or spiritual. And I used to love those kind of films. So I went on and I developed a spiritual base to my system. And my system, now growing up in a Christian church as a Baptist, my father was a preacher, my father was a preacher, so I had some understanding of scripture in that sense. But when I came into the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as taught by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, then that really opened me up to understand the Bible better, as well as black people, that we were always Muslims. The first slave ship that came to America was filled with Muslims. And Alex Haley bear witness to that, of that teaching that came from Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm and all that taught this. And so I took those spiritual teachings and applied it to my martial art program. Okay. And it worked. And not only did it work for the black kids, I got to say for the record, it worked for the white kids too, because I applied the same principle, and here in New Orleans as well as in South Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always good when you could create a system that actually helps people make changes for the better. A lot of times what I see is a lot of mindless entertainment.
Yes.
It's a lot of, teaching young men not to hold themselves accountable for their actions. Like you said, sometimes people will scare themselves out of success or scare themselves out of opportunity because, it's like, when I used to play football, I wish I wanted to do some kind of martial arts, but my father had different plans for me. I was a running back. So, that was a whole different thing in his own self. But
it's never too late.
Yeah, I don't know. It's his body telling me something different. But, I think it's always, people who are more afraid to take those risks, to take those challenges, to go head on with life, And I had an episode I talked about, people struggling with overcoming adversity. And I was talking about how a lot of people think that adversity is specially set for them, when the truth is everybody, that's just life.
Right.
You're going to go through something. You're going to have some difficulties, you're going to have some challenges, and you can learn from those challenges.
Absolutely.
And I think that, it was amazing how you took the challenges in your life and created something. It's like saying making lemonade out. If you have lemons, you make lemonade.
Right.
Yeah.
And I credit that, you use the word creative, but I credit that to my father, who was very creative. He was a musical genius. Was never taught how to read a note. He just hear it one time, and he can come back and play everything that you just played. And he self-taught himself.
Yeah.
And I'm very creative, so I get us kind of fall. You said with the apple don't fall from the tree.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I remember you talked about you did a little acting, and you had a movie company as well. You want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, in New Orleans, it was called Gumbo Film Productions, and it's still around. And one of the things, acting was always something that I liked. Coming up, I was in plays in school, and I used to write plays and whatnot. And I was good friends with a good friend of mine who passed away now. His name is Jomo Kenyatta Bean. Y'all might know his brother Anthony Bean, another actor. But Jomo, I learned a lot from him as well in terms of acting techniques and how to write, because he was a great playwright. I just took it to the next level, learned how to write screenplays. Now, I have a cousin who does religious films. His name is Richard Polite, and he's done different films, all religious films, and I learned a lot from him behind the scenes of how to put a film together. And then naturally, people like Spike Lee was very inspiring as well, watching how they struggled and what they did to get to where they're at. So now, I started Gumbo Film Production, and then after Katrina, I kind of rested. And then my oldest daughter, I have 3 daughters. My oldest one is an actress, and she was 4 years old. She said, I said, what you want to be when you grow up? I used to like to film, like Bill Cosby, film these children and give them the talk. I do to all of my karate students, right? And one day I filmed her, and I said, what you want to be when you grow up? And she was like 2 years old. She said, a movie star. Just like that, right? So, and long and behold, and I tell parents all the time, your kids say something, listen, because, sometimes that be destiny talking, and you can help guide them in such a way to get to where they want to get to with those goals, And so she's a very successful actress today. She's been in different film, different TV shows, but she has her own show now that she works in. She's one of the main characters, but she's not the star of the show. But she's pretty much close to it because it's based on a true story. It's about a young girl who solves a murder mystery. She has her own report. She's a reporter for YouTube.
Okay.
And she has her own little YouTube station, and she actually solved a murder mystery. No one believed the little girl, but one police officer, and that's my daughter. And now my daughter, her character now is the sheriff of the town. In fact, the new season started today. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but the show started today, and it's on Apple.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you always got to be proud of your kids, especially when they're doing the right thing, going the right direction. I know you must be proud of your daughter because I know you talked about it a couple of times. Like, go check it out.
Yeah, Home Before Dark. That's what it's called.
Okay.
And,
I'm gonna definitely give it check it out. A little bit later today and start watching and see what's going on with it. I'm all for supporting people who doing things.
And her roommate is a successful actress as well. Stephanie Charles, and she's been in a lot of Tyler Perry films. She just got killed in one of his shows. What's the show called? Oh boy, I forget the Vicious. I think it's called Vicious or something like that.
I guess it's not Tyler Perry. Nobody not dying or getting cheated.
I don't know, but they tell me her character was pretty bad. She was real messy. Her character, so they finally took care of her in the last. But also Stephanie played the other show he's in. What's that called? The Pains. She played as the young lady who has 2 kids that live with the Payne family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
And then so her and my daughter, they're roommates. They've been roommates for quite some time. And they're both doing real well. I'm real proud of both of them.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else you want to add?
Well, this book, if you want to get the book, first of all, it's called Sensei. That's what people call me here, Sensei. Now, it's a fictional book, but yet, there has some, it's motivated off of some of the realities of life. Characters that's out here or situations that have taken place, So it's called Sensei, and it will teach the reader about a lot of things. First of all, the black martial arts that many people don't understand. How does martial arts affect the black community?
Yeah.
This is what I've been about all the years, So it's got that in it. It's also a film where the guys, he's originally wrote it all in New Orleans, but because I'm in South Carolina, I retweaked it.
Yeah. To
fit the modern times we're in now with the pandemic and everything, right? And so we did a piece. The piece is actually was where his character's name is Tariq. And Tariq has a martial arts school, something similar to what I did here in New Orleans and what I do in Florence, South Carolina. And he wants to buy land because he understands that land is essential to all freedom, justice, and equality. And so he wants land, and he has the opportunity to get this land in a building. And the owner is only giving him so much time to come up with the money. Yeah. So he goes into these underground fights to raise the money, putting his life on the line for a cause greater than himself. Yeah. As I said on the book cover, some things are worth fighting for. And you'll understand what kind of martial arts school he has when you read the characters in the book and find out what does he do. How does he function as a nonprofit? How does he get the people motivated? He has no money, so how is he able to do this for so many years and be so successful with these kids? How you get these black belts to do what they're doing and teaching these life skills to the youth? Because all that's going to be in the book and it'll be in the movie as well, to show that how martial arts can change our lives in many avenues, not just from a punching and kicking aspect. Okay. And so he goes in and he builds up a program that's worthy of having his own reality, his own building, his own land. So he goes into these underground fights in New Orleans and meet kind of shady characters and meet some other characters, hustlers who are trying to hustle into the game of fighting these underground fights. And he's got to find him a maker, somebody who can make his fight, take the bets for him, that kind of thing. So he goes into something where he's discovering a covey of different characters and other sinister things that takes place in the city of New Orleans that fall from the eyes and the ears of tourists.
Yeah.
You see, and that's going to show you that. And then it's going to take you on a level where you're going to be happy, you're going to be mad, you're going to be laughing. It's got all kind of layers to it. But at the end of the day, you will learn something about relationships, how men and women should relate to each other, how we should relate to using our martial arts to make our society better, making children better. Besides his fighting skills, he's a very dangerous fighter. Got a boyish-looking face, real pretty, but very vicious. So he's got all that in it. And we want to make it into a film, and we're even giving people the opportunity to invest into it, the everyday person. To make it, you want to be an investor. That'll be in the book. You learn how you can be a part of that if you decide you want to do that. So that's the plan, to make it into a film. That's the most important part for me. But the book is important for me too to get out, because whether we make the film or not, you're going to be able to take something from this book that's going to enlighten you in a lot of things that's going on right now with the pandemic and all the stuff that's going on. They're trying to get folks to do and people don't want to do and whatnot. And Tyreek touched upon all of that in the book and whatnot. And I'm just happy that I was able to do it. And I was, I thank God for giving it into the sister Kathy Curtis, who said, Sensei, you need to make this into a novel. This thing is good. I know you got more you want to say. Yeah. And I went on and did it. And that's where we're at now. So I'm excited about the book. And I think when you read it, you'll be excited about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds very interesting. Sound like a emotional roller coaster, kind of like a drama, with a little thriller in it and action. It sounds like a good mix of everything.
Yes, sir.
That makes a good movie. But if you are interested, you go to www.senseithemovie.com. And if you go there, you get more information on not just the book, but also the film, right?
Yes. Well, you get information about my program, period.
Okay.
What we do and what we intend to do. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to leave the link in the description to the website as well. It's truly been an honor having you on.
Well, I want to say this, man, bro. It's an honor for me to be here. This is my first podcast,
Yeah.
I have some other folks that's asked me in Florence, very well-known DJ up there, and he has his podcast. And I may be doing some things here with the radio folks here and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But this is my first podcast. I just got to say that for the record, man. And I'm happy to see that what you're doing, because we need so many black media to give us information out here today. Who don't compromise themselves, who's out there not afraid to speak truth to the people, because the people need you. And when you speak across the airwaves like we're doing right now, you have influence over people's thinking. Mm. So we have to be careful when we speak into the airwaves of what we say or when we write, because we're like, we're teaching God's people. Yeah. And so we want to teach right. And that's why Jesus talked about the scribes and the Pharisees and whatnot. The scribes are the writers. They can either write right or they can write wrong. So we all have a duty to perform. Hopefully we'll do the right thing at the right time for the right situation, right people, and that's what I'm about. But I'm proud of the fact that you're doing what you're doing and keep doing what you're doing, because like I said, we need folks like you, to give this message and to have a show to talk about some of the positive things that's going on among the African American community and whatnot. We don't get that all the time. Every time you get that, it's always about something negative or something negative about somebody, or somebody that was once good did something negative, But we need more information, like a show like this. Yeah. So I hope you continue to grow and stick to your platform and never give up.
No, I won't. I appreciate the high praise. It's truly humbling.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's all we got for you today, folks. We be out. Peace.